Hey guys, it's Dr. May. How are you? Today we're doing yet another installment of Sensorimotor Psychotherapy. So this was called Mindfulness of the Present Moment, and a lot of you may have heard of mindfulness before. But this one actually adds a really cool component that they call the 5 building blocks of experience. And it's one of the foundational skills in sensorimotor psychotherapy that we're going to be using in a variety of other lessons as well. So pay close attention. It's simple, but it's really powerful. So I hope you're going to like it. Get this PowerPoint up today. Ooh, that was pretty fast. My computer's been a bit slow, so I'm glad this came up right away. All right, so mindfulness of the present moment. So that begs us to define the word mindfulness, doesn't it? So let's just get on the same page about mindfulness. So even if you've heard it before, this could kind of just get it a little clearer in your mind. Okay, so a great definition that I found that I've also used in my DBT videos is this. So mindfulness is fully awake and embodied awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, right? So there's a few components here. Notice embodied awareness, right? So this is sensorimotor psychotherapy, and we're working a lot with the body. So it actually really goes well with the idea of mindfulness, because a lot of mindfulness is tuning into what's going on with us, including within our body, right? And we have to pay attention to that deliberately and stay in the present moment, right? So we have a few different things going on that involves the mindfulness skill, okay? So how does this fit in with, sensorimotor psychotherapy? So as we've talked about, it's a therapy that's specifically designed to help us work through trauma issues and as well as attachment issues. So that's like early relationship issues we had with our caregivers that continue to impact us and our relationships and our emotions today, right? So if we've struggled with these things, it has an impact on our past, present, and future, right? So a lot of times our minds might drift to memories of the past and perhaps negative memories, right? So we might ruminate about them, or they might just spontaneously come to mind and disturb us. And so the past is often something we struggle with. And the future is something we struggle with as well, because we might be worried about what's to come, especially if we struggled before, because we think, the past could predict the future. And if I had problems before, I'm probably going to keep having problems again. And that can make me worried, right? It can increase my anxiety just thinking about that. And so when I worry about the past and when I think about the future, it impacts me in my present moment. And I might have difficulty actually being here in the moment because my mind is going to the past and the future. And as I think of the past and the future, or I worry about what's going on with me right now, it has an impact on different aspects of my current experience, right? So as it says on the bottom here, this is the idea behind adding mindfulness in this mix. So if we learn to mindfully notice, observe, and describe our present experience using the 5 building blocks, which I'm going to show you in a sec, it could teach us to work with the effects of the past, and I'll also add with some of the worries about the future, without having to relive it, okay? So if I'm reliving those things or immersed in it in the present, it's impacting my present life, even if stuff happened before or it didn't even happen yet. So the idea is to work with the effects of those things now and kind of even them out a little bit so I could be more in the now and have more relief and more enjoyment of my current life. All right, so check this out. Screenshot this if you want to, okay? These are the 5 building blocks of experience. And as I said before, it's going to go throughout a lot of the different upcoming lessons that we're going to talk about here in sensorimotor psychotherapy. And it seems so basic. I can't believe I didn't even think about this before, but there's so much you could do with these things. It's like such a simple concept, but there's so much you could do with it, observing these in different kinds of ways and manipulating them in different kinds of ways that can make the now so much better. Okay, so here they are. We have our 5 sense perceptions. Yeah, I said that right? So vision, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, right? So we've all heard of the 5 senses before, most likely. Our thinking, our emotions, and because we're working with the body a lot, we're talking about the way our body moves or has an urge to move, and our body sensations, like what it feels like from the inside, which is often called interoception. Okay, so we're going to look at all of these things in a variety of ways and use them to help us in the now. All right, but it involves being aware and mindful of these different components. Okay. All right, so why bother? So why are we going to be more mindful of these building blocks? Well, it helps us in a variety of ways. Okay. In the first picture here, it helps us to see our experience differently. So instead of just being immersed in it and perhaps like, trapped in a really uncomfortable experience, we're going to reflect on it a little bit. So we're going to approach it with curiosity and interest instead of fear. Okay. And that helps put a different spin on it, right? So let's say I was really uncomfortable and afraid of the anxiety feelings I had within me. But now I'm going to actually kind of step back and just notice what the anxiety does to my 5 building blocks. And that helps me tolerate it a little bit better. Okay. And it helped me understand the links between those 5 building blocks. So I know how like my thoughts and my feelings, my movements, my 5 senses, and my body sensations all influence each other, and how changing one could change the other ones, right? So if we look back at this, right, notice that they're all touching, okay? So that I did that for a reason, because there's no separation. They all have an interconnected relationship, okay? So while they're different concepts that we could separate out and mindfully notice separately, they all influence each other. Okay, next thing, and this sounds a lot like DBT for all you DBT fans out there. It really can help you with emotion regulation. Okay, so being aware of the 5 building blocks can help reduce the power of emotional triggers. So instead of things setting us off really quickly and easily, we might get a little bit better at responding instead of reacting. Okay, it helps us to step back from experience rather than being immersed in it, right? So when I'm mindful, I kind of go, oh, that's interesting. What's going on with my emotions? Oh, that's interesting. I have a tightness in my chest, right? So I'm not as wrapped up in it. I'm stepping back and I'm seeing it through mindful eyes. So that helps me to tolerate my emotions better, so I don't really get upset by them. And it helps me to regulate them better and gain more mastery over them. So that's really important too. It's a really positive way of gaining self-control, okay? It also impacts our thinking, right? So doing this and practicing mindfulness in general helps to improve our brain functioning. It's one of the healthiest things we could do for our brain. So it improves our focus and our concentration, because we're focusing on each building block. We're focusing on what we're experiencing, and it helps us to think more clearly, ultimately. And when we think more clearly, we can make better decisions. And that's really important. All right, so other pluses here, right? It gives us a sense of agency and empowerment. So like I was saying before, it's like a positive way of gaining control. I can choose to pay attention on purpose to these 5 building blocks and choose to respond instead of react. That's a great way to be empowered, right? And I'll feel less victimized by my inner experience, because I'm going to have some choice about how to relate to it. I won't make it just make me fearful again. Oh, that's interesting. What's going on with this? Oh, let me be curious instead. I'm now choosing. See that? And also, when you're in the moment and you're not as trapped by the past and the future, you feel like much more vital and alive, right? Instead of feeling that deadness inside or feeling like you're so out of touch with the now because there's so much going on, you feel more like here and now, immediacy. There's more richness, vitality, aliveness, right? And ultimately, that's a feeling that we're seeking in a lot of different ways. Sometimes we use unhealthy measures to get to it, but this is a healthy way to get to it. Okay, and finally, it also helps our relationships, because a lot of times we're impacted by people, probably all the time, right? Our interactions with people influence our 5 building blocks, and where we're at with our 5 building blocks influence how we then respond to other people. So gaining a little bit more awareness and choice and control over our 5 building blocks could help us be a little bit more relatable, a little calmer, a little bit more aware of the other person, aware of our reactions, make better relational decisions, right? So all this goes together. All right. Are you tempted yet? Is it sounding good to you? All right, I hope so. If not for this video, keep going to the next ones because you'll see how these really start to work a lot. Okay, so let's do a few exercises just to start to put these in motion, okay? And as usual, with a lot of mind-body exercises, mindfulness exercises, you have to just do it, okay? It doesn't work if you just conceptually understand it. I mean, it works a little bit, but you're not gonna get the full effect unless you try it. So I hope you'll be willing just to give it a try, okay? So here's some things you can start off with. So we're gonna start positive, all right? So I want you to think about a good experience, right? So reflect upon, what's a time in your life when you remember feeling good? Think of something you were doing, people you were with, what you were feeling, what was going on at the time, and try to make it as vivid as possible for you. If you need to close your eyes while you imagine that, that's fine, or maybe writing it down might help as well, whatever works for you, okay? And as you're going through that, I want you to think about how you feel with the 5 different building blocks. What happens with those 5 building blocks as you're remembering this good experience? Okay, so chances are sometimes when we have these good feelings and we really get into it, like these good memories rather, it impacts the 5 building blocks. So just notice what happens for you, okay? And there's no right or wrong, it's just notice what happens with them for you. So afterward, maybe write this down just, so you can keep track of it. Think of maybe which building block really helped you best connect with your positive feelings. So for example, was it like, when I thought of that positive memory, I felt myself standing up straighter and feeling a little stronger. I felt a little more confident in myself. Or I started to think, wow, I really can succeed at something. Or whatever the thought was. Maybe the thought's the most powerful thing. Maybe it was the posture or the movement that was the most powerful thing. Or maybe you had a certain feeling that stood out to you, like pride or accomplishment or happiness or joy, whatever it was. So just take note of which building block might have been the strongest for you. And then what you can do is try to do that building block on purpose in the future to help you feel the good feelings again, right? So if the positive thought really did it for me, maybe I could practice thinking that same positive thought again in the future, and it could help me feel good. So it could like work first we start with the memory and then the building blocks, but we could work backwards from the building blocks back to feeling good to a memory, right? So it could go both different directions, all right? So the idea is we wanna try to figure out how we could feel better, right? Okay, sorry, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. Woo. All right, so here's another thing that we can try. So a lot of the times, as you've probably experienced, we get wrapped up in our thoughts and feelings, and they start to feel like reality. They start to feel like they're facts. They start to feel like that's all there is. So when we're mindful of them and we step back from them a little bit and just with curiosity observe what's going on with our thoughts and feelings, they tend to feel a little less powerful, okay? So instead of, let's say, deeply thinking and believing I'm not good enough, I'm gonna step back and saying, I'm having the thought right now that I'm not good enough, right? So see, that's a little separation. If we were in radically open DBT, I would say, I'm aware of the thought that I am not good enough, right? That's their terminology. They use certain phrases to help separate through there, okay? So let's say the emotion, right? So let's say here the emotion is, I'm really angry, right? But instead I'm gonna say, in this moment, I'm feeling the emotion of anger, or I'm aware of the feeling of anger, right? So that gives us a little more mindful distance and shifts our experience of our thoughts and emotions. So as you're practicing this, and you could just, let's say, sit there for a few minutes, and every time a thought pops up or every time an emotion pops up, just use your describe skills and just label it. Oh, I'm having the thought that I need to have dinner soon. Oh, I'm having the emotion of anxiety because I'm having the thought that I didn't cook dinner yet. So just like kind of practice doing that as you notice your thoughts and emotions. And after doing that for a little bit, you could use tune into the other building blocks of body sensations and movements and say, well, what is this exercise? How does this exercise impact my body sensations and movement, right? So is there a shift from being immersed in thoughts and emotions to just being mindfully aware of thoughts and emotions, right? What changes in my body? Do I want to move a little differently? Do my movements get calmer? Do I feel more energized? What happens within me physically when I step back from my thoughts and emotions? All right, hope that makes sense to you guys. Okay, so then they have a bunch of exercises that basically go like this. I'll give you the summary. So it starts out where they want you to be in a stressful situation, right? Well, not on purpose, but chances are you could just spontaneously get into a stressful situation. So the next time you're in a stressful situation, tune in to your building blocks of body sensations, thoughts, emotions, and movements, right? Or, movements that you feel like doing. So just notice what those are, take note of them, write them down if you want. Then they're going to introduce one sense at a time, be mindful of that sense, and then recheck in with your building blocks. All right. So you want to see how distracting yourself from stress by focusing on one of your senses in the here and now changes the experience of your other 4 building blocks. Okay. So let's go through this so you can see the idea. All right. So 1, right? So during a stressful situation, we're going to notice the building blocks. Then let's say we'll focus on all the sounds that we just happen to hear in the here and now. Okay. So you don't have to create anything. You don't have to put on music necessarily. Just tune into whatever sounds are there for maybe a few minutes and then recheck in with the building blocks. Okay. Same idea, right? So during a stressful situation, we'll check in with the building blocks. But this time, we're going to notice all the sights around us mindfully. You could even choose to describe them if you like, if it keeps you anchored. So let's say that woman's in the park on that bottom picture there with the binoculars. So maybe she's saying, oh, I noticed the leaves on the trees. I noticed a bird in the tree. I noticed the grass. I noticed the sky. I noticed a cloud in the sky, right? So she's just focusing on what she's seeing, then rechecking in with the building blocks, seeing how it impacts, okay? All right, so here's another one, sense of touch, okay? So stressful situation, we're noticing the 4 building blocks. Now we're introducing, okay, for a minute, I'm gonna take my mind off the stress and I'm gonna focus on something that I can touch. So you might wanna, on purpose, find something that's interesting for you to touch that'll keep your attention, or just use what you've got on hand. You could put your hand on your lap, touch the fabric of your pants, rub your hands together, feel what your hands feel like, touch the table that you're touching, whatever it happens to be, it doesn't matter, but just notice whatever it is you're touching, okay? You could even notice the feel of the fabric of your clothes on your body, right? Or the feel of your feet on the floor, or the feel of your body in the chair, whatever works for you, but whatever sense of touch, just focus on that, recheck in with your building blocks, okay? Next, they combine taste and smell, but you could separate them. I'm just doing what's in the workbook, okay? Because sometimes taste and smell go together, right? If you're eating something, you're tasting it and you're smelling it, so you could wrap it all together, okay? Whatever works for you. All right, so we're doing stressful situation, checking in with those 4 building blocks, maybe eating something to spark our taste and smell, noticing all the tastes and smells non-judgmentally, maybe putting some words to them to help us really get into it, going back and checking with the building blocks. All right, so if you try this, try the different senses as a distraction or as a mindfulness practice and see which ones maybe work the best for you, right? So something might be easier to, might impact your building blocks more, right? So let's say I'm really more of a touch person, and when I touch things, it really, grabs my attention, it really helps calm me, and that's the biggest impact of my building blocks, right? So if I write that down and notice it, that's pretty important information. All right. Or let's say eating a sour candy and tasting that and really grabs my attention and it really helps me be mindful and it takes my mind off my stress. And that has the biggest impact on my building blocks. All right. So it might vary for you over time, but it's important just to try these different things so you get to know yourself better and you get to realize which ones are the best ones for you if you want to use this as a skill on purpose. Okay. All right. So that's the last one. All right, so again, this is just an intro to the building blocks, and there's a lot more good stuff to come. All right, but give it a try, all right? See how it starts out working for you, and be back with more soon. All right, take care, guys. Be good.